Hi everybody, this is Lara with your free daily update for Bitcoin, Ethereum and XRP. Stepping back today a little, looking at Bitcoin's technicals on the weekly chart. I'm going to add an identification for an inverted head and shoulders pattern. Here's the head, left hand shoulder, right hand shoulder, the peaks between left hand shoulder, head, right hand shoulder and head. That's how you draw the neckline perfectly across these highs. That line is pretty much horizontal, so it's got good technical significance. Price broke through and closed above the inverted head and shoulders pattern. It's coming down to test support a few times down here. If today's downward session continues lower, then look out for it to find support just above 24,800. The target from the inverted head and shoulders pattern is 34,669. That target is still in play. It's pretty normal to see price break through resistance and backtest support. So far, this support line from the neckline of the inverted head and shoulders is holding. There's reasonable technical evidence to suggest that the low of November 2022 is most likely to remain intact for years to come. There is a hammer candlestick pattern here, a bullish engulfing candlestick pattern here. The bullish engulfing pattern did not have push from volume, but that's okay. We don't always see push from volume right off those lows for Bitcoin. The downward trend reached extreme at the weekly time frame. While that trend reached extreme at the weekly time frame, RSI reached oversold and exhibited single bullish divergence. RSI has only reached oversold once before on the weekly time frame in Bitcoin's price history, and that's associated with a sustained low in 2014. So this is a very, very bullish look. So given the downward trend reached extreme, RSI reached fairly oversold and exhibited bullish divergence, we give these candlestick reversal patterns quite a lot of weight. It looks like this low of November last year is most likely to remain intact. I have some reasonable confidence that the low of 11th of September may also remain intact, but not as much confidence as I have for this one back in November. And it's also supported by the head and shoulders pattern and price continuing to find support at this neckline. Let's have a quick look on the daily chart at what's happening today for Bitcoin. It's coming down again for another test of support at this trend line that contains this bearish pullback. This pullback from the high of 13th of July to the low of 11th of September down here. Price found resistance, broke through. Test of support fell short. This test of support is now perfectly touching this line. If price breaks below support at this line, which it could do that. Price can do anything it wants. We're dealing with a balance of probabilities, not certainties. One of my maxims is always assume the trend remains the same until proven otherwise. Another thing is always assume support or resistance will hold until it's broken, and when it's broken, then you move to next support or resistance. So if support at this red line is broken with price closing below it, then look out for next support at 24,800. But assume support here will hold until it does not. Assume that we're likely to get a bounce up from this line. Look for next resistance at 27,400 and below that 29,000. Yesterday's session completed with an increase in volume, so volume is pushing price lower. That's commonly associated at or very near the end of a downward movement. It doesn't mean it has to end here though. We could see further downward sessions with a further increase in volume. ADX is declining. There's no longer a clear trend. It did previously give us a very, very strong bullish signal, but at this time frame now, there's no clear trend. In a trendless market, if we revert to the model of stochastics plus support and resistance, we would be expecting price to continue a fair bit lower until stochastics reaches oversold. However, the last downward swing, stochastics did not reach oversold. It fell reasonably short before we saw an upward swing. That may happen again. If that happens, then prices should be very, very close to the end of this downward swing. For Ethereum, let's step back and look at the weekly Elliott Wave count. Within a cycle degree third wave, which may only unfold as an impulse, I have primary 1 and 2, primary 3 underway with intermediate 1 and 2, intermediate 3 underway with minor 1 and 2. Minor 2 now moving lower as a double zigzag, may not move beyond the start of 1 below 1074.40. I've drawn a base channel around intermediate waves 1 and 2 from the start of 1 to the end of 2 with a copy on the end of 1. In previous weeks, price found support beautifully at this base channel. Today, price is now moving below the lower edge of the base channel. Base channels often work. They work more often than they fail, but they don't always work perfectly. It was working perfectly up until today, and now it's no longer working perfectly. Sometimes when these markets form slow basing action before they move up toward increase in acceleration through the middle of a third wave and explode at the end, the early stages of a third wave has a curved look to it, and they can break below base channels as they complete that basing action. That may be what's happening today for Ethereum. On the daily chart, I've changed the structure of minor wave 2 as it's continuing lower as a double zigzag. First zigzag here I've labelled minute wave W, subdivides 5, 3, 5. I know a B is a triangle's actually 5 ways. We'd just classify it as a 3 in that it's a corrective structure. Impulse for A, running contracting triangle for B, short little impulse for C, zigzag for X in the opposite direction, joining the two zigzags of this double, and then the second zigzag, minute wave Y, a 5, 3, 5. So 1, 2, 3 combination for double zigzag for 4 and 5. Zigzag for B and a 5-wave structure for C. So minuet C has to be a 5-wave structure. So far we have 1, 2, 3, probably a little triangle in here for 4, and now a final 5th wave. Draw a channel around minor wave 2, draw the first trend line from the start of minor 2, the end of minor 1, to this high here labelled minute wave X, place a parallel copy, little overshoot here for a 3rd wave, that's okay, and that tells us that this is most likely a 3rd wave. They have the power to overshoot channels. The 5th wave found support almost beautifully at that trend line. Now that this trend line, the lower edge of the base channel, is no longer working, let's next area of support using a trend line, let's look out for this trend line. So that's how you draw the trend line, and it allows for a little bit more downward movement. So if that trend line is going to be touched again for a final test of support, we might see more downward movement today and or tomorrow for Ethereum. Now support at 1550 has been broken. It turns into resistance. Next support quite close below now at 1380. Volume for Ethereum is overall declining as price falls of its own weight. So without volume actively pushing price lower, it looks like this downward movement may come to end sooner rather than later. It could just continue to drift down though for a few more days. ADX is now indicating there's a downward trend for Ethereum. RSI is not oversold, nor is money flow. There's a long way to go before this trend reaches extreme. For XRP, the Elliott Wave count also stepping back and looking at the weekly chart. Within a cycle degree 3rd wave unfolding as an impulse, here's the end of primary 1 and 2, start of primary 3, which may only subdivide as an impulse, leading expanding diagonal for intermediate 1. Intermediate 2 may be over here, but for XRP this absolutely certainly could continue lower, and this would have an absolutely normal look. A normal depth for intermediate 2 would be from 80 to 90% the depth of intermediate 1. So if it moves lower and ends between 0.40954 and 0.34447, then intermediate 2, if it were to continue down like that, would be a more normal depth in relation to intermediate 1. It's very, very normal for these cryptocurrencies to have deep pullbacks in bear markets in the 80 to 90+% range, common behavior. On the daily chart, if intermediate 2 is over here, then minor 1 and 2 may be complete, minute 1 and 2 may be complete. I'm absolutely open to relabeling minor 2 as an expanded flat, however. It could continue lower. We could move the degree of labeling here down 1 degree. This could be A, B, C, and C could need to move a little bit lower. If minor 2 does continue, it may not move beyond the start of 1 below 0.4456. Daily technicals for XRP, support at 0.4875 has now been broken. It now turns to resistance. Next support below, quite strong at 0.46. Volume pushing price lower, can't make a judgment on the current session. It's only 2:30 in the afternoon. The session hasn't closed, but overall up to yesterday volume is pushing price lower. So for the short term that's bearish for XRP. ADX is still declining. There's no clear trend for XRP at this time frame. If there's no clear trend, reverting to a model of stochastics plus support and resistance. Stochastics has moved from overbought through neutral, it's now entering oversold. So that model would expect a little bit more downward movement from price until it touches support and stochastics is oversold. So that model would expect a little bit more downward movement to support about 0.46. However, the last two sessions now so far have bullish long lower wicks, and with volume pushing price lower, what we might see is a final downward session with a little bit of lighter volume, and if that happens, that again is possible that the pullback for XRP could be over. That's it from me today with your free update for these three big cryptos. I hope everyone else is having an awesome day.